Let's get something straight. Your worth isn't up for debate. It's not something that fluctuates based on whether or not someone acknowledges you, texts you back, or shows interest in you. And yet so many people tie their value to the attention they receive from someone else. Why? Because society has conditioned us to seek validation outside of ourselves. From a young age, we're taught that being liked, being chosen, and being wanted equates to being valuable. But that's a lie. Think about it. When you were a child, did you ever stop and wonder, am I enough? No. You played, you laughed, you explored, and you existed without questioning your value. It wasn't until the world started telling you who you should be, what you should look like, and how you should act that you began doubting yourself. And then, suddenly, you started measuring your worth based on things that were never meant to define you. Now fast forward to today. You meet someone, you feel a connection, you start texting, talking, maybe even spending time together, and then, out of nowhere, silence. No response, no explanation, just an empty space where their attention used to be, and suddenly your mind goes into overdrive. Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Not enough? You start overanalyzing every interaction, scrolling through past conversations, looking for clues as to why they've pulled away. But here's what you need to understand. Their silence is not a reflection of your value. We live in a world where people come and go for their own reasons. Sometimes they're dealing with personal struggles, sometimes they lose interest, and sometimes they were never serious to begin with. None of those reasons have anything to do with your worth. Yet so many people take it personally. They see rejection as a verdict on their desirability, their intelligence, their beauty, or their importance. But that's not how self-worth works. Self-worth is an inside job. It's built from within, not given from the outside. It's the deep, unshakable knowing that you are valuable simply because you exist. Not because someone texts you, not because someone desires you, and certainly not because someone decides to stay. So how do you strengthen that self-worth? It starts with shifting your mindset. Instead of waiting for someone else to validate you, you validate yourself. Instead of wondering if good enough for them, you ask if they're good enough for you. Instead of sitting around analyzing their silence, you use that time to invest in yourself, your happiness, your goals, your growth. Because the truth is, when you truly believe in your worth, you stop craving external validation. You stop feeling anxious when someone pulls away. You stop settling for half-hearted efforts. You stop over-explaining, over-giving, and overextending just to prove you're worthy of love. Think about the most confident, magnetic people you know. Do they chase? Do they beg? Do they shrink themselves down in fear of not being liked? No, they stand firm in who they are. They exude self-respect. And because of that, they naturally attract the right kind of energy into their lives. Now compare that to someone who is constantly doubting themselves, constantly seeking approval, constantly waiting for someone else to tell them they're enough. That energy is heavy, it's draining, and more often than not, it pushes people away rather than drawing them in. The paradox is this: when you stop needing someone else to choose you, the right people will. Not because you begged, not because you chased, but because confidence is magnetic. But let's take it even deeper. Why does a lack of a text trigger so much insecurity in the first place? Because it hits on a deeper wound. The fear of being ignored, abandoned, or not good enough. And that fear doesn't come from the guy who didn't text back. It comes from past experiences, from moments where you felt unseen or unimportant. That's why it stings so much. It's not about them, it's about you. And if that's the case, then the solution isn't to get them to text you. The solution is to heal whatever is making you feel like their silence defines you. That means looking at where that insecurity comes from. That means working on self-love at a deeper level. That means reminding yourself every single day that your value is not determined by external circumstances. Because here's the ultimate truth. When you know your worth, you don't settle for bread. You don't wait around for someone to recognize what you already know about yourself. You don't tolerate inconsistency, mixed signals, or half effort. Instead, You carry yourself like someone who is worthy of respect, effort, and love. And when you do that, the right people will step up and the wrong ones will fade away. So the next time you catch yourself feeling anxious over a text that never came, stop and ask yourself, would the most confident, self-assured version of me be sitting here worrying about this? If the answer is no, then it's time to step into that version of yourself, because self-worth comes first. Always. When someone stops texting you, when the messages become sporadic, short, or non-existent, your first instinct might be to fill in the blanks. You might start making excuses for them. Maybe they're busy, maybe their phone died, maybe they meant to text but forgot. And sure, life happens. People do get caught up in things, but let's be real. When someone truly values you, they make the effort. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a statement in itself. It's communication, whether you like what it's saying or not. And often, silence tells you everything you need to know. It reveals priorities, interest levels, and respect. Because in a world where we are more connected than ever, where phones are practically glued to our hands, the truth is this: if someone isn't reaching out, it's because they don't want to. And that reality can be hard to accept. We don't want to believe that someone we care about is choosing not to respond. We don't want to think that they've lost interest or never had it to begin with. So we justify their behavior. We overanalyze their last text looking for hidden meaning. We tell ourselves that if we just wait a little longer, they'll come around. But let's be honest. If they were truly interested, would you even have to wonder? Let's flip this around for a second. Think about the people in your life you truly care about. Your best friend, your family, someone you admire. If they text you, do you just forget to respond? Do you ignore them for hours or days without reason? Of course not. Because when someone matters to you, they're on your mind. And when something is on your mind, you make time for it. Now, if that's true for you, why would it be any different for someone else? The brutal truth is this: when someone isn't texting you, it's because you're not a priority to them. Maybe they liked the attention you gave them. Maybe they enjoyed the idea of you, but never saw you as something serious. Maybe they've moved on and don't know how to say it. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear: their silence is intentional. And that silence, it speaks louder than any excuse they could ever give. When someone truly wants to be in your life, they don't leave you guessing. They don't make you wonder where you stand. They show up. They put in effort. And if they don't, then the worst thing you can do is try to convince them to. Because if you have to chase them for a response, for attention, for clarity, then you've already lost. Yet so many people refuse to accept silence for what it is. Instead of taking the hint, they double down. They send another message, hoping to spark a reply. They check social media, seeing if the person is online, wondering why they can post a story but not answer a text. They replay conversations in their head, trying to pinpoint the moment things changed. And all this energy, all this effort is being wasted on someone who is already checked out. Silence is an invitation to prove yourself. It's not a challenge to win them over. It's a clear, undeniable message. They are not making the effort. And that's all the information you need. The problem is when someone ignores us, it hits something deep inside. It pokes at our insecurities. It makes us question our worth. It brings up old wounds of feeling unseen or unimportant. And instead of recognizing that their silence is about them, not us, we internalize it. We start thinking, what did I do wrong? But that's the wrong question. The right question is, why am I letting someone else's lack of effort determine how I feel about myself? Because the reality is, if someone isn't texting you back, you have two choices. You can obsess over it, overanalyze it, and try to fix it, or you can accept what's being communicated without words and move accordingly. You might be thinking, but what if they really are just busy? Sure, maybe they are. But even the busiest person finds time for what matters. Even someone with a packed schedule can take 5 seconds to say, hey, I'm swamped today, but I'll text you later. The fact that they aren't doing that says everything. And here's another truth. When someone genuinely wants you in their life, You won't have to question it. Their effort will be obvious. You won't have to decode mixed signals, wonder if they're playing games, or overthink whether or not they're interested. But the moment someone stops texting, stops showing up, and starts making you doubt where you stand, they've already given you an answer. It might not be the answer you wanted, but it's an answer nonetheless. So rather than fighting their silence, rather than filling in the gaps with hope and excuses, take it for what it is. Because the moment you do, you free yourself from the cycle of waiting, wondering, and doubting. You stop wasting time on someone who isn't choosing you. And most importantly, you stop giving your energy to someone who isn't giving theirs in return. For too long, we've been programmed to believe that if we want something, especially love, we have to chase it. We've been told that effort means pursuit, that if we care enough, we have to fight for it. And while effort is necessary in any relationship, there's a difference between healthy effort and desperation disguised as effort. Chasing is when you ignore the signs, suppress your standards, and convince yourself that if you just try a little harder, they'll finally see your worth. Choosing, on the other hand, is when you know your value, stand firm in your standards, and decide who gets access to you. The difference is power. One leaves you powerless, the other puts you in control. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself anxiously waiting for a text? How many times have you replayed conversations in your head, wondering if you said the wrong thing? How many times have you settled for breadcrumbs of attention just to keep someone in your life? That's chasing. That's putting someone else in the driver's seat of your happiness. That's giving away your power. And let's be honest, chasing never works. When you chase, you're not operating from confidence. You're operating from fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of not being chosen, the fear of not being enough. And when you move from fear, you compromise, you shrink, you accept less than you deserve. Because deep down you believe that having a little attention is better than having none. But here's what you need to realize. You were never meant to chase, you were meant to choose. You were meant to stand tall in your worth and decide who gets access to you, who earns your time, and who is deserving of your energy. Because when you shift from chasing to choosing, everything changes. Instead of sitting by the phone, waiting for a text, you ask yourself, do I even want someone who makes me question my importance? Instead of trying to prove your worth, you remind yourself, my worth is already established. I don't need to convince anyone of it. Instead of running after people who give you the bare minimum, you make room for the ones who show up without hesitation. Because here's the truth. When you chase, you send a message that you are willing to settle for less. You tell the world, I am not enough on my own, so I need your validation to feel complete. But when you choose, you send a different message. One that says, I know who I am. I know what I bring to the table, and I will not waste my time convincing someone to see my value. And let's take this even deeper. Why do people chase in the first place? It's not just about wanting someone. It's about wanting to feel wanted. It's about craving validation from an outside source. But here's the problem. Validation that comes from others is never enough. It's temporary. It's fragile. And the moment it disappears, so does your sense of security. That's why people get addicted to the chase. It's a cycle of highs and lows, a constant pursuit of external approval. But the moment you stop looking outward for validation and start looking inward, you take back control. Think about the most powerful, confident people you know. Do they chase? Do they beg for attention? No, they attract. Not because they're playing games, not because they're withholding, but because they know their worth. They know that desperation repels, while self-assurance draws people in. And that's the shift you need to make, from needing attention to choosing where you give yours, from seeking validation to knowing your value, from waiting for someone to pick you to deciding who is worthy of your energy. Because when you choose instead of chase, you automatically elevate your standards. You stop settling for inconsistency, mixed signals, and one-sided effort. You stop tolerating emotional inability, half-hearted communication, and excuses. You stop making room for people who don't make room for you. And something incredible happens when you do this. People start treating you differently. They respect you more. They see you as someone who is not easily won over. And that alone makes you more valuable in their eyes. Because the reality is, people don't appreciate what they don't have to work for. If you're always available, always accommodating, always chasing, you make it easy for someone to take you for granted. But when you hold yourself to a higher standard, when you require effort, when you choose rather than chase, you attract those who are ready to meet you at your level. And here's the most important part. This shift isn't just about dating. It's about every area of your life. It's about friendships, career opportunities, and personal goals. When you stop chasing and start choosing, you start living from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. You realize that you don't have to settle for whatever comes your way. You have the power to create the life you want. Because at the end of the day, the people who are meant for you, the ones who truly value you, won't make you chase them. They'll meet you where you are. They'll put in the effort. They'll show up without you having to beg for it. And that's the kind of energy you deserve. Rejection. It's a word that carries weight. It stings. It makes you question yourself. It makes you wonder if you weren't good enough, if you said the wrong thing, if you should have done something differently. But here's the truth. Rejection is never about your worth. It's about alignment. It's about making sure you don't settle for something that was never truly meant for you. Yet so many people take rejection personally. They let it define them. They let it dictate their self-esteem, their confidence, their ability to open up to new opportunities. And the reason it hurts so much isn't just because someone didn't choose us, it's because of the meaning we attach to it. When someone stops texting you, when they pull away, when they disappear, it's easy to think, I wasn't enough. But that's the wrong story. That's the disempowering narrative. The real story is this is clearing space for something better. Think about it. How many times in your life have you been devastated by something that in hindsight turned out to be a blessing? How many times have you lost something only to realize later that it made room for something far greater? Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, a path that was blocked. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that could happen, but later you saw it clearly. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. And this is where the shift happens. Instead of seeing rejection as proof that you weren't enough, start seeing it as evidence that something better is coming. Because when someone doesn't choose you, they're doing you a favor. They're showing you in real time that they aren't meant to be in your life. They're saving you from investing more time, more energy, more emotion into something that was never going to fulfill you. Yet most people fight rejection. They resist it. They cling to what's falling apart, trying to force something that was never meant to be. They refuse to accept the silence, the distance, the lack of effort. Instead of walking away with dignity, they chase, they beg, they try to convince the other person to see their value. But the moment you have to convince someone to stay, you've already lost. Because real connections don't require convincing. Real love, real friendships, real opportunities, they flow. They feel easy. They don't make you question your worth. So why do we hold on to people who don't want to stay? Why do we fight so hard for someone who isn't reciprocating? It's not because of them, it's because of us. It's because deep down we fear the unknown. We fear the space that's left when someone walks away. We fear that nothing better will come along. But let's break that fear down. Where does it come from? It comes from scarcity. It comes from the belief that good things are rare, that love is limited, that if we lose something, we may never find it again. And that belief, it's false. The world is abundant. There are billions of people, endless opportunities, limitless chances to create the life you desire. But when you're so fixated on what didn't work out, you blind yourself to what's possible. Think about it like this. If you're holding onto a closed door, staring at it, knocking, begging for it to open, how will you ever see the new doors that are waiting for you? You won't. You'll be too consumed by what's behind you to notice what's in front of you. And here's the biggest truth. When someone doesn't choose you, it's not a loss. It's a gain. Because now you're free. Free to attract someone who sees your worth without hesitation. Free to step into relationships that feel reciprocal, not one-sided. Free to invest your energy into people who truly value you rather than those who make you question yourself. This applies to every area of your life. A job that rejects you, it's not a loss. It's a redirection to something better suited for you. A friend who drifts away, that's not abandonment. It's making space for new connections that align with your growth. A relationship that fades, that's not failure. It's a lesson, a stepping stone, a necessary chapter that leads you to the love you truly deserve. And this is where the transformation happens. Instead of seeing rejection as pain, you start seeing it as guidance. Instead of letting it break you, you let it build you. Instead of seeing it as proof that you weren't enough, you realize it was never about being enough. It was about fit, about timing, about alignment. Because the truth is, the people meant for you won't leave. The right opportunities won't pass you by. The things that are truly aligned with you will feel effortless. They won't require chasing, begging, or proving yourself. They'll just flow. So the next time someone stops texting you, the next time someone walks away, the next time you feel rejected, pause. Instead of spiraling, instead of questioning your worth, instead of clinging to something that's slipping away, ask yourself, what if this is happening for me, not to me? What if this is clearing space for something greater? Because the truth is, rejection isn't about loss, it's about redirection. And when you start seeing it that way, you stop fearing it, you stop resisting it, you stop letting it define you, and that is when you truly take back your power.